Welcome to a Road Less Traveled podcast. I'm your host, Hilary Haron. Today we have with us Dr. Danielle Malvini. Thank you for joining us, Danielle. I'm very excited to have you. So give us a little bit of background about what you do and who you do it for.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a family medicine physician. I work for St. Agnes, and my office is at the Magnolia location, which is out at Temperance and Herndon.
Okay.
And we do primary care and urgent care out there. And we've been open for, I think we're coming up on 5 years at that location. And initially when we opened, we were, they kind of had us as an innovative care model where we're really trying to change, how we're seeing patients and how we're working and utilizing staff, and some days we do better at that than others, but all day getting to take care of people is kind of fun.
It's hard to change a traditional model.
Really
everybody's
hard.
Used to something.
Yes, absolutely.
Gotta be a challenge.
It's hard. And I think a lot of people are, I have a lot of people who come in and say, in the good old days, like you could, call your doctor and get in within 10 minutes, or, you could come in that afternoon. And a lot of us struggle with that.
Do you know how many people weren't getting healthcare at that point?
Yeah.
Also, hello.
Yeah. I think a lot of us struggle with this idea that, we want to be available all the time for our patients. And yet there are so many people, right? Yeah. And there's only so many hours in the day. But, we're like kind of trying to figure out how to make it work. And hopefully we do a pretty good job at it. We try. And, but yeah, it's a hard field to feel like you're giving people what they're looking for, I would say.
Well, my understanding is that there is a shortage of physicians right now.
Yep. And it's going to get worse, especially as we have the population ages. There's a huge deficit in physicians in general, as well as nurses, but in primary care specifically, which I think, there's not all the glory in primary care.
Right.
But it's hugely important. It's the foundation of our medical system, and it's getting harder and harder with the number of people that we have going into primary care to service the population. So,
well, and people don't, my experience, this is me as a patient, right? Yeah. People don't go to their primary care physician unless something is wrong, which is kind of the opposite of how it's supposed to function, right?
Totally.
Like you're supposed to see your primary care regularly, and then when something is wrong, you see a specialist.
Yeah, or you're established with your primary care so that when something goes wrong, you can get in and figure out what's going on. And I think since we're talking about women today, I think a lot of what I see are women who are getting most of their care with their OBGYNs.
Yeah.
Through the majority of their life. And then they hit, 39, 40, and they're done having kids, and they realize like they haven't had a primary care doctor in 20 years, and they don't know what to do next. They don't know, where does their health care go from there? And a lot of like, I think fear and apprehension around like, hey, have I unintentionally been neglecting myself and my own health for all of this time? Putting my kids first, putting my family first, putting my job first.
I think, well, yes, duh.
Yeah. I always tell them it's okay. Like, you're here now. We'll get it taken care of.
Well, and I feel like in the medical field, especially like with that specific thing, have I been neglecting myself, to my detriment, but not on purpose, is something that we've seen forever. Yeah. So we know how to deal with it a little bit better, even if changing the mindset would be ideal.
Yep.
But do you see a lot of, is that like your age range, or are you full family?
So we do, for our primary care, we do 18 and older, and we do everybody.
Okay.
We have a Valley Children's clinic right next door. So we don't do pediatrics for primary care, although we do for urgent care, which is nice because one of my favorite things is like a kid comes in, they don't feel good, and you get to just make them feel better and send them on their way.
And that's like that old school thing you were talking about. Like the whole family saw one doctor.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so if you're doing it for urgent care, you at least have like the relationship, and maybe that is something that will drive that child to seek
care.
Your treatment or your office. They're comfortable there.
Yeah. And we do see that actually. And my favorite thing is like, we have, people who are referring their sister, their mom, their neighbor, and then their kid turns 18 and now their kid's going to establish as a patient as well. For me, that's really fun because you get to know, like you're knowing the person. To me, the medicine is fine. It's interesting. It's, it's what I'm there to do. But what I love about it is who am I sitting and talking to, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing for fun? What do you do with your day? How are you spending your time? My favorite question to ask people is, so what do you do for fun? And like, I can't tell you how often people like,
what's that?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. And it's like, okay, great. We need to like work on that.
Yeah, I know a lot of F words, but that's not one of them.
Yeah. Like, and so, it is really fun, and we're kind of like always driving to bring back that community part of family medicine where like, yes, we can take care of your mom, your neighbor, your sister, your aunt, and not have this be like a terrible, overwhelming experience. Like, you're going to come, we're going to laugh, we're going to talk. Like, you're never going to get yelled at by me anyway, because like,
yeah, like that's
why, right?
I don't care about anything that much. Like,
yeah, like we all have parents to yell at us for stuff. Like we've got, and that going to the doctor doesn't have to be this really terrible thing. Like we can figure it out together, and so we're having fun. Like my office is a fun place.
That's good.
Yeah. How
How do you keep from becoming, the cautionary tale? I've been neglecting myself at the detriment of myself.
Yep.
But putting my family, my friends, my work first.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I don't have kids, so I don't have to contend with that. Although I do have a partner, and sometimes he's like, "Man, you're working like a lot."
You're like, mm-mm.
Yeah. We have a joke in the office that somebody came in once and said that my desk looked lived in, and I was like, "Well, it is. Like I live here.
Nice. It's the idea.
It's cozy, right? I have all my stuff all around me. It's hard, right? I think anytime you have something that you're passionate about, you want to be there, you want to be doing it. And I do find myself in that position a lot. And then the other thing is the flip side of really just wanting to sit down and talk to people is that the paperwork often takes a back seat.
Yeah.
And so getting that done on the back end often takes a ton of time. And
well, there's so many regulations, right? Like
Yeah.
it has to be done a specific way. So it's not just the paperwork, it's the specific way that you have to remember to
Yes.
do the paperwork. Nobody
Yep.
wants to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, learning new systems and putting in the right codes and responding to messages. I mean, it's a lot. And so, yeah, I definitely struggle with that. Like, am I neglecting, especially my own health? And I mean, I joke with patients that like the only reason I have a provider is because she works in the same office as me and she takes care of me and I take care of her, and we,
But that works for you.
And that works for me.
And you are seeing someone.
Yes.
So that is something.
Yes. And she holds me accountable and I hold her accountable. And so I'm really lucky that I have a really great team around me. I have, MAs who will say like, "Hey doc, like have you stopped for lunch today? Like here, let me go get you a plate of something."
You're leaning to the right. Are you going to fall over?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And I feel really lucky that we have an environment where all of the staff, all the other providers, we're laughing, we're talking, we're not taking ourselves too seriously in this very serious field, this very serious job that we, work as a team, that we're taking care of each other, looking out for each other.
One of my favorite quotes is, "Never take yourself too seriously. Nobody gets out of here alive."
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
I had to like punch that one in there. it was my Instagram header for a while.
Yeah.
What do you do for, the super coveted F word fun?
Ooh, boy. Great question.
Your passion for what you do comes through.
Thank
you.
I'm
curious what else you're passionate about.
So a lot of things. I am not at all judgmental of binge watching television shows. I'm a big fan. I love me some Netflix. And I really love to read. I have family that's up in Northern California. I love to go visit them. I love being outdoors, although I do not love nature. I'm not a nature.
Not like mosquitoes.
Early. I don't love being dirty, but I do.
If I'm in a net, I'm good.
Yeah, me
or
too.
On a patio.
I'm so long as there's a sink and a bathroom somewhere close, I'm probably okay.
Okay.
But I do love when the weather permits to go out and jog and walk and just kind of relax. I'm a little bit of a homebody. I will say I love to travel, which I didn't really know about myself. And I started scuba diving a few years ago, and I love it.
That's on my bucket list.
Most amazing thing I have ever done.
Did you get certified locally?
I did not. I did. I went for the first time after I finished residency. My mom said, okay, we're going on vacation. And so we did it kind of on a lark. We both fell in love with it. And so that next year for her birthday, she wanted us and our partners to get certified. And so the four of us did, and we finished our certification in St. Thomas on her birthday trip.
That is fascinating, and what a cool place.
It was amazing. We had an incredible time, and subsequently have been able to go on a few scuba diving trips, and just the coolest thing I've ever done.
You watch the videos, right? And you're like, that's not real life. And a girlfriend of mine and I talked about it at one point, and I'm like, now you've said it, and now it's got me thinking again.
You have to do it.
Have you gone over to the California coast and done it?
I have
locally?
not. We've talked about it, but all the diving we've done is warm water diving.
Okay.
And so we've talked about Monterey, right? Or, San Diego, and have not done it yet. Our next goal is Fiji, I think. But
the California coast can wait. Fiji
yeah. But my partner works a lot too, for as much as he's on me about it.
Yeah.
And so finding the time to do it, we're great at talking about it. But yeah, I suppose I need to practice what I preach a little bit more as far as taking time off.
I feel like we all do, right? We can all pick out what's wrong with somebody else's life. But when it comes to taking a look at our own and being like, oh, wait, this is my one life. I got to find a little bit. For me, it's not work-life balance. It's an integration.
Yep.
Because I have loved what I do. And especially now I've transitioned from what I did before. Really, if you connect with it, if you're passionate about it, it really does become an integration. Like you said, your desk is lived in.
Yeah.
Because that's where you want to be. You want to be doing.
Yeah.
You were smart enough to choose something that you wanted to do.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel really lucky. I did not know that I was going to love it all the way through. I remember after the night before my first test in med school, I called my dad and I was like, hey,
I quit.
I don't think this is for me. And I just don't know. And my dad very calmly and with less support than I maybe would have liked said, you're already $100,000 in debt from this first year. So I don't care if you want to do it. You better go home and study.
You might as well just finish it out.
Yeah. Like you're in it now. And really, it's a long path. Family medicine shorter than certainly some of the other specialties, but it is a lot of years and it is hard. And I would be lying if I said there aren't times that I questioned it, but now here doing what I do, I really love it. I feel so lucky to be able to do what I do all day long and get paid for it. And
before I ask you what led you to medicine, I have to know what do you do when you want to give up? Like you said, the night before your first test, or even now when you're like, okay, I've reached my limit.
Yeah.
What do I do?
I cry.
What do you do? Okay, you got to get it out. And then
so
what?
I'm a big crier. It hasn't always been that hasn't always been my go-to, but yeah, I cry. I think there is a huge value in crying.
There is.
And we cry.
Scientifically proven, as you know.
Right. We cry a lot in my office. Patients often find themselves crying, and I don't know, I bring it out in people, I guess. But part of, like I said, the environment that we have in my office is I really can go to my office manager, the other providers, my MAs, and say, like, I need a minute, or like, can we go into the break room and just talk for a few minutes? I'm feeling stressed out, or I'm feeling overwhelmed. And I try to be open, honestly, with patients about that too, right? Because they pick up on what you're bringing into a room. And so if I come in and I'm not my best self, if I am feeling overwhelmed, or I'm tired, or I've got a headache, or I'm, whatever it is, like I will often like say, hey, if I seem like a little bit off right now, here's what's going on with me. Like, I'm just feeling this. And so, that's not me not paying attention to you. That's, because again, like the biggest thing for success, I think, for that provider-patient relationship is them knowing who I am.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to be really real with you, and you can be real with me, and you don't need to lie about how many times you're exercising, right? Because I get it. I have written 5 days a week on the forms. Like, I've done it. And is it 5 days? No, it's not. Like and it's okay, right? Like, if I don't come into the room thinking that I'm perfect, thinking that I am the smartest person alive, thinking that that I'm going to tell somebody who's 75, the best way to live their life. Like, they've been doing this for a while. And so I just am pretty real about when I'm struggling, when I'm having a hard time. And that has led to like really great conversations with my patients, really great support from my patients. I mean, I think, again, like, just super lucky to have this job where I can go, I can be myself, I can share, my patients share, and it's a lot of like friendship along with doing the health stuff, doing the medicine stuff.
I think everybody would be fortunate to have a doctor with your mindset. Yeah. It doesn't seem, obviously I haven't seen you, but it doesn't seem like it's transactional. Like a lot of times it sometimes feels like it can be.
It can.
Like, oh, this is what's wrong here. Take this.
Yep.
Go away.
Yep. Or that feeling of like you're on the clock. Feeling like you have X number of minutes to explain what's been going on, or, talk about your mental health, or, explain why you're feeling afraid or scared about something. And unfortunately, the system forces us into that a little bit. And it's, it can be exhausting, right? You're having these kind of big conversations pretty frequently. And when you're supposed to see 20 patients a day, trying to have that connection with everybody is hard.
100%, because you have to be open and vulnerable to have that connection. Yeah. So I can imagine how exhausted you are by the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think the system, I don't want to say it forces doctors into that, but
as a patient, it does.
Yeah. It's hard.
From a patient perspective. And not just the rules, but like the insurance companies and the way that they force things. Like,
yep, absolutely.
It's really kind of a perfect storm.
Yeah. And I think the trend that we see now is that in order to get that, to get the care the way that people want it, they're, looking to providers who are doing concierge medicine, which, I certainly understand the model. And unfortunately, I think it just prices out like some of my favorite people.
It
would be priced out by that. And you know, I would lose so much in my day not being able to know some of the people that I know. So the system is
rigged.
Real tricky. Yeah. I don't know. It's a real tricky system. And I don't know that it's gonna get better just on its own.
Yeah.
I kind of have my doubts, but
it takes a lot of engagement. My opinion is it takes engagement from people who have the energy and the ability to explain it to our legislators.
Yep.
Who only understand it from a patient's perspective and aren't really able, they don't even have the time to look at the whole system.
And it's really easy, and I find that I do this all the time. It's really easy to say what the problems are, right? Like I can sit here all day and talk about why the system is difficult. Do I have a solution?
Right.
No.
That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. And you know, coming up with how to fix that model in a way that like financially is going to work. I don't know. That's for people who are smarter than me. I don't know. That's way above my head.
I think it takes a number of people being at the table.
Yeah.
To really make that happen. What led you to medicine in the first place?
So I was that kid who always wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
And I could trace it back to a number of things, but the reality is like I have, you know, a picture of me in preschool and like the little like I want to be a baby doctor or something. I think is what I thought I wanted to do. And so it was just always the path. It was always what was gonna happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, in kind of as I got out of college and reflected on, you know, hey, like, what am I doing? I think I really had to reassess, why am I doing this? And the reality is I like helping people. I love specifically talking about mental health. You know, I struggle with depression and anxiety myself, and I think
maybe everybody
more people
now.
do.
At least people are talking about it now.
Yes, and so you know, I've been lucky enough to have people in my life who were able to help me, and I think when I hit like 25, hey, like, am I really doing this doctor thing? It was like, yeah, because I've seen the benefits. I've seen the way that this helps. I've seen the importance of it.
Well, and you're doing it a little bit differently, and maybe even a lot of bit differently, and that can help even more.
Yeah.
I mean, the stigma around the mental health conversation is still so crazy when it's in my opinion, it's the thing that our society could benefit from the most.
I would agree. And we talk about it all the time, and oftentimes it's not what people come in leading with. But, you know, again, as part of that, like, how do you make people feel comfortable to open up? Like, I'm not shy. I'm not ashamed of struggling with depression and anxiety. I think it makes me a more interesting person.
Right.
You know, like,
it's part of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it's hard. And I see and I hear a lot of the, you know, stigma around, I just don't want to be this person who struggles with this, or, you know, hey, like, we all got here different ways.
Well,
right?
Nobody picks it. You don't go and like, I'm going to sign up for this mental health issue.
Yeah. Like anxiety sounds like fun.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I always want
panic attacks are great. I love feeling like I'm having a heart attack.
I really want my teeth to be flat.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's going to be great.
Yes. Best thing I found was Botox in my masseters, because boy, do I grind.
I do too. And it's hard to find a doctor who does it well.
Yeah. It's probably the thing that gives me the greatest, what's the word I'm looking for? Like not the greatest joy, but where I feel like I have done the most impact is when somebody comes in and they're really struggling, and And whether it's medication or therapy or just them telling somebody else and then coming back and saying like, this has really changed. Like I feel better is probably the moments where I just like feel my heart flutter a little bit because I know I've been in those places where you feel really low, you feel like you don't know what to do. And I've had those moments where it's like, oh, this is starting to turn. And to be able to help somebody else have those moments is like enough to keep me going when I am feeling like I'm struggling, because it's huge.
We talked to an LMFT actually just before this, but one of the questions that I had was, do you get referrals from doctors? A lot of times I have observed that people feel bad, right? But they think it's like something physical.
Yep.
So you're seeing somebody who's like, this hurts and that hurts and this is that and that's that. And you're like, oh, I know what that is. You're not gonna like it.
Yeah.
Do you have like a set group of mental health professionals that you like to refer to? And like, do you guys have relationships outside of the office?
I have friends who are therapists, certainly, but no. And in fact, my personal experience is that finding a therapist is one of the most difficult things to do.
It's so hard. It's worse than dating.
Yeah, it like is, and I have these like very strong like sense memories of times where I've like, okay, you got to pick up the phone. You got to call your insurance and get a list of names. Okay, I got the list. I can't make the phone calls today. And like, I try to tell patients, like, you need to know that when you're trying to find a therapist, this is going to be the hardest thing because you're not going to want to do it.
You already feel like you want to give up on your life.
And you're gonna feel like you're failing, like it's way too much work. And like, let me tell you what this experience is.
That is so, I wish somebody would have been able to tell me.
Yeah. That like, you're going to call 5 people. You're never going to get somebody live on the phone when you first call. So don't worry about having to talk to somebody. You're going to leave a message. Right. And like of the 5 that you call, 2, maybe 3 are going to call you back. Right. One of those isn't going to be taking new patients. Right. And you're going to just have to work through the list. And yeah, I mean, the systems do not integrate.
It's bizarre.
It is.
It's
so
getting
bizarre.
better. I know that there are better ways that it is happening. But it is so important to have that perspective that you were talking about. Like, it's going to be hard.
Yep.
It's going to take time. You're going to want to give up.
Yep.
What in the interim do you believe in the like digital versions of mental health care?
Yeah, I
something
think
that you can have immediate access to.
Yeah, I do think that that's helpful. I think the biggest barrier for people getting into therapy is like that first step. And and I've experienced it myself, right? As soon as you start doing it, you're like, oh, this is great.
Right. Like,
we all need a therapist, right?
Why are we gatekeeping on the therapist thing?
Yes. I do think that there is huge value in sitting with someone and looking somebody in the eye and being able to like share what you're struggling with. But just like primary care, there are not enough therapists out there. The insurance issues around getting a therapist are ridiculous. And luckily, like the long-term gain from it is so valuable because if it was really just short-term, like I don't know that people would go through all of that for a short-term, 1 or 2 sessions. It's like, this is something that is going to be helpful, but you're going to need to work to get it.
Well, and it's this is a personal question, so if you're not comfortable answering it, that's okay. Yeah. When did you kind of identify anxiety and depression as something that was going to be a part of your life?
Absolutely. So I usually say right around 16, although I probably struggled with it earlier than that. I'm really lucky. My mom, who passed away about a year ago,
I'm sorry to hear that.
was an alcoholic and loved her. She was my best friend, favorite person. But my parents had split when I was young. When my dad realized what was happening, dude threw me into therapy. I think I was 11. So I already had that therapy part of it. And did that for a couple of years. And then really, I think right around 16, I felt that moment where it's like, if one little thing happens, I am gonna fall apart. And very strong memory of like dropping my pencil in my room and just feeling like everything fell out from underneath me. I went to my dad, and he took me to my doctor and went on medication at that time and went into therapy and had the most amazing therapist. That was a relationship that I had on and off until I think I was 26. And if I still lived up in the Bay Area, I would probably still be seeing her a couple times a month. But yeah, I mean, that strong recollection of like, if truly like I dropped my pencil and I just remember seeing it drop and feeling like I cannot do one more thing. I'm not gonna make it if one more thing happens.
I have a very similar journey. But that we, especially at that age, society kind of takes away that feeling. Oh, you're emotional, or you're hormonal, oh, you're this, oh, you're that. Like, okay, fine. Maybe you are hormonal.
Sure.
But take your freaking kid to see someone. Take your freaking kid to talk to someone. Or be that person. My story was similar. Something happened and I ended up driving around in the car with my dad for like hours and hours and hours and just talking. And then, next step was go see someone. And, really blessed to have parents that had the capacity for that. I am a parent now myself. My kids are 3 and 5. And I can tell you the first thing you want to do when they're in the throes is stop it. Like you want to stop it because you think stopping the reaction is going to stop the feeling. Even though you know that's not true.
Right.
And I think people hearing this, I hope understand they have like an ally in you. And even if they can't see you, are you opposed to people reaching out to like your office for resources or
not at
do
all.
you guys have the capacity for that?
That's a great question. I don't know, but I can find out.
Okay.
But no, because I'm not against that at all. I think, luckily, and it's so funny because my dad, very close, and I love, you talked about driving around with your dad. We had like a longer commute to when he would take me to school. And so, I had an hour and a half time with my dad every day, just the two of us, to talk, for him to quiz me about school and give me, spelling quizzes and
obligatory parent stuff.
Yes. And listen to music and also just to talk. And it's funny because he was always definitely on board with the therapy, but he was not really on board with the medication part of it. And didn't want that for me. And we really did get to a point though where it was like he understood that it was something that I needed. And we like continuously have this conversation, he and I, about, hey, like, where did we start on this journey? And now we're, lots of years down the road, and where are we now? And like, I've had the opportunity to like talk to him about his mental health, right? And talk him through starting medication, or even just the conversation with his doctor about medication. Is this something that is needed at this point? And, things really do come full circle, and things happen for a reason. But, I did have him there at every step to say like, hey, you're not alone in this. You're okay.
And do you feel like some of that's generational? And do you feel like some of it's gender related?
Yeah. It's really hard for men.
Like I look at my parents and I'm like, you're very supportive of me doing it, but you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It's like to my dad. And to my mom, you're very supportive of me doing it, and you're also doing it. Like,
yeah. And I had just a conversation with somebody just the other day who was like, you know, I'm feeling like we started the medication. I feel so great. And now my sister is like, hey, like I think I've been struggling with the same things you are. And then she talked to her mom, and her mom was like, yeah, man, like I've really been thinking about this for a long time. I think it does come easier to women to acknowledge those feelings. We do get, I think, a lot of the hormone.
You're emotional.
Yeah. And like,
so we're just naturally more able to be like, fine.
Yeah, I am. Right.
Then fix it.
Yeah. And, you know, like for better or for worse, right? Because I definitely am more emotional around my period. Like, that's a thing. But I have an easier time maybe because like that's an acceptable thing in society. It's easier for me to talk about having emotions than it is for men. I mean, I'm not a man. I don't know how often they talk about it. But when I see patients coming to me, and especially men who are around the same age as I am, or a little bit older, because younger men seem to have an easier time with acknowledging anxiety. But right around, 30s, 40s, men have a hard time saying that, like, they are not just powering through life, And like, we know they're not. We're seeing it on the other side.
Right. Well, and like to what end, right? Like, oh, when I get to X, I'll be happy. When I'll get to X, I'll be happy. I'll get to X, I'll be happy. Okay, well, you missed the full alphabet.
Yeah.
And now you're at X and you realize that's not the answer.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Really interesting. And I'm actually really interested in, you're a high achieving woman who has been dealing with, anxiety and depression, mental health stuff for most of your life, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And how that has played a role. And, especially med school that puts so much pressure on you. Was navigating it in med school different than it was, or that it is in normal life, or when you were younger? Has it always been in the front seat, or has it?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I have an easy answer to that. I think part of my depression and anxiety always came from feeling like not enough, not good enough, not pretty enough, not, thin enough, not whatever it is. And the thing that I had to grab onto was that I was smart, that school stuff came easy to me. And so it was almost like a lot early on, especially a lot of that drive was like, well, I may not be pretty, but I'm smart, and being kind of driven towards that because I felt like I didn't have what would make you popular in middle school and high school. I didn't feel like I had that thing that I needed that everybody else seemed to have. But the thing that I had was I could do school. And so I think that was a driver through my early education. College was hard. I mean, I went away to college. If you asked my friends from then, like, my depression was bad, and I was not managing it well.
Yeah. Because there's the things in college you want to do, right? Like, you're partying, you're drinking, or whatever, and all of that is bad for it.
Yeah,
whether you're medicated or not.
And I think to that point, I hadn't figured out myself. I hadn't gotten to that point where I felt like I was okay. I mean, I truly, I think I hit that, I don't know, 6 years ago. I think for 6 years I felt like I'm okay. But it took a really long time, right? Medication doesn't fix that.
No, it doesn't.
Therapy can help.
Therapy helps.
But therapy can't get you there on its own.
They're just tools in your toolbox, right?
In your toolbox.
You have to use them.
Yeah. And it has taken me truly until recently in my life to be able to say my depression is one thing and it's a part of me, but but like, I'm okay. I'm okay with me. And I think part of that is getting into a job that I love every day and getting a different kind of validation than just you're getting an A on a test or, good for you, you finished your homework. Like, I feel that now in a way that I didn't feel when I was 16 or 25.
Right.
And I still struggle with depression and I still struggle with anxiety. It fits in a different place in my life than it did for the majority of my life. And I mean, I truly think like part of the reason like getting through was because that was all I thought I had. And yet I can look back on like how I managed, residency applications and see where my depression was causing, was like really putting my future in jeopardy, like having trouble meeting deadlines, doing applications, getting organized, reading instructions, because I just couldn't.
Self-sabotage, lack of focus.
All the time.
Yep. I solidarity.
Yeah. Right.
Like, and people don't talk about it. Even like us sitting here talking about it, like I can be very open about it. I can say I have learned to live with my little demon. Like I take him everywhere with me, but I've figured out that he has to be quiet.
Yeah.
Obviously mine's a little demon man.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like the more that we talk about it, the more that we normalize it, the better chance everybody else has.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And some of the things that you were talking about, like the lack, the not enough, the at the risk of being redundant, imposter syndrome, like we put these lenses on ourselves.
Yeah.
Because as you're talking, I'm like, what? Like, how would you even think that? Knowing damn well that you have no control over that. These are just things that happen. And I am so grateful for your transparency and your honesty.
Thank you.
I know that will have an impact. I know even for me, it will have an impact in just living more in my own truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's okay.
Yeah.
Like it's okay.
Yeah.
And I can see how that works for your patients too.
Yeah.
How can feel comfortable being like, I'm sick. And you're like, no, you're depressed. And they're like, no, I'm not. You're like, okay, but it's okay if you are. And they're like, fine. It's okay if I am.
Which, by the way, is I think something that women really do struggle with, right? And if you spend any time like reading like I spend too much time on BuzzFeed, right? But like
it's hilarious though.
These lists of like, my doctor said that I was blah, blah, blah. And it turns out I had something real going on. And like, I'm very sensitive to this. Like you can, if you see a young woman come in and she's saying something is wrong, you cannot just look at her and say like, okay, little girl, like you're probably just anxious.
Yeah.
Like we have to talk about anxiety. We have to talk about depression. It doesn't mean we stop looking. Right. Like I don't ever go in saying like, I have the answer for you.
Yeah.
Because there is that like feeling of like, hey, I don't want to go to the doctor because they're just gonna, tell me I'm too young to have problems. Right. Yeah. And yet, so often we really like start diving in, and by the second or third visit, it's like, I started thinking about the symptoms I was having. I really do feel like there's a lot of anxiety around this. Like, let's talk about that. And
society puts a lot of shoulds on us, right?
Yeah.
I should look this way. I should feel this way. I should wear these shoes. I should have this. I should have that. And ultimately, none of that really matters.
No. And it's like, I tell patients, we talk now a lot about weight loss.
I bet it's real.
It's
right now. It's like wild. It was in the 50s, kind of like
it's a lot. And, I tell people like, look, I grew up thinking like I had to look like Kate Moss. I was never going to look like Kate Moss. I was never going to look like her, right? I like came out of the womb weighing more than Kate Moss does. And I was never going to look like that. But I felt like the fat kid, right? Like I felt that my entire life. And like, we need to talk about like, what are you trying to get to? Because weight loss is healthy. We want to be healthy, but also if you think that you're going to look like, you know, I don't even know who's out there now, but somebody now, like that's not where I want you to feel good about yourself. I want you to feel good in your clothes. I want you to feel good when you're out doing things. I think we have a lot more of this like body inclusivity and like love yourself stuff. That doesn't, like, it's a fun thing to say. It is a harder thing to feel.
And it's harder for like the long-term impact, right? Yeah. So we're at that point where it's changing and we're seeing it. We're not going to see the real impacts of it until later.
Yeah.
Even, I mean, although I am here for it, I am a huge supporter of it. I have a daughter, and a lot of it is about choosing your words at home.
Yeah, totally.
And talking to them about what's really important.
Yeah.
With my daughter, it's if there's somebody sitting by themselves, do you go over and you talk to them? Like, that's what matters.
Yeah.
With what you did with your day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what are we putting the value on? Because, you know, I don't know anybody around my age who doesn't feel like they struggle with how they look or how they dress, or are they measuring up, or, you know, all of those things. And the reality is that every single person has something that they can offer.
Yep.
You know, you asked about, you know, how I navigated depression and all of that through medical education, and really, like, all of the things, you know, we all have our past, and I was never able to see any silver lining for any of it until I got to a point in my career where I can choose to sit down and tell somebody, hey, here's what I'm feeling from you. And all of those things that I went through have made me better at that. And so I can sit there and say, I have felt like the fat kid sitting at the table. I have felt the I don't fit in. I have had the family members who have had this, that, and the other. And like, here's how it was for me. How is it for you? And to like be able to sit and really be with somebody in those things, to me, like, I didn't know. It took me until I was almost 40 to say, hey, like, here is the silver lining from all of those things that I felt so awful about for my whole life. Like, I finally got to this place where I can feel good.
You parlayed them. You did that. Parlayed them into something positive.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, my partner has helped with that a lot. He is like, you know, I've never felt better about myself than I did when I met him. That is a part of it. And I, you know, don't want to say that I'm like just this like magical person who suddenly overcame all my issues.
No slight to him, but you still have to do the work.
Yeah.
To get there. Yeah. Or you will stay, just from my knowing it intimately well, or you will stay there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do sometimes.
Well, you have to sit in it sometimes.
And sometimes I fail too. And I tell patients that too. Like, that's what I spend my day doing. Like, hey, you know, fell off of whatever diet or medication or goal that you had. That's okay. Like, I did too.
Just keep going. Just start again.
Let's start again. Like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, today's a new day. Just start over. It's okay.
It's better to start from where you are, because the longer you put it off,
sure, and
the
how
longer
long are you
it's going to
beat yourself
take.
Up about your failures.
100%.
Right? Like, I could do that all day long.
Right?
But why? I don't have time for it.
No, thank you. It seems very heavy.
Yes.
I would like to continue this conversation much longer, so we may have to do this again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am so grateful for your transparency and your honesty, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm definitely going to have referrals for you, so I'll send them over.
Awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A huge thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their stories, wisdom, and breaking down barriers with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Your support means the world to me and helps spread the word about the amazing women paving the road less traveled in male-dominated industries. If you have suggestions for a future guest or topic you'd like me to explore, please reach out on social media. I'd love to hear from you. Follow me on your favorite social platform for updates and behind the scenes. Keep pushing boundaries, challenging norms, and lifting each other up.